like growing up, this was the first true Schwarzenegger film for me. I mean, I'd seen Terminator and I'd seen a few of other films, but this was the one that stood out, you know, for me. And I used to watch it with my dad a lot. Yeah, it's unlike anything I'd seen at the time. So it was based on a short story by Philip K. Dick called We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. I hope I've not just stole Tim's.
No, I'm going to jump in here too.
Okay.
Such a film.
Yeah, and the short story was about how we remember things, both false memories and real memories, how they could be melded with reality. It was originally due to star Patrick Swayze, which would have been a very different film. Yeah, very different film. But after it all fell through, it was picked up. Basically, Arnold wanted this film, and he was waiting for the rights to go up, and he ran to the director that would be Paul Verhoeven and told him, this is the film we are going to make. And that film was 1990's Total Recall.
So good.
Such excellence. That's mine too. I know, big surprise.
It is so good. Did you see the recent remake with Colin Farrell?
I erased it from my mind.
Is it called Total Recall?
It still has the same bones, but yeah, it's not set on the red planet. But yeah, Total Recall, like at the time, it was actually the last big budget Hollywood movie to use large scale miniatures as well. So rather than heading straight to CG, because it was the time, like a few years later, obviously you had like Jurassic Park was throwing dinosaurs everywhere, and Total Recall was full on big sets and huge miniatures, and it worked for them. They won an award, an Academy Award for Best Special Effects before they'd even shown up. They were told, you're going to win this award. Yeah, just to prepare them, because at the time it was so groundbreaking, especially some of the physical creature effects. They couldn't possibly give it anyone else.
The visual effects are awesome. Like, it's all like, I love practical effects, and you get so many fewer of them these days than you did back then. There's some rudimentary CGI, but all of like the mutants, all that stuff is practical. And stuff that I agree, Shane, like some of the effects, like they have never left my mind. I have like just jotted down some notes here about like when Arnold takes the like tracking ball out of his nose.
Yes.
So crazy.
Grim. Yeah.
The Kuato growing out of George's stomach, that is insane. I love that. Of course, the 3-titted hooker, and the grotesque suffocation on Mars when they're just like, that's so excellent. I love all that stuff.
The device in his nose, for me, that's the biggest clue that it is actually a dream, though. Because at the beginning of the film, he walks past the scanner and you see his entire body. You see the X-ray, and there is nothing in his head, whereas that's supposed to have been in his head for years. And then obviously he moves it because it wasn't there until he needed it to be there as part of the story. So the thing with the film, obviously they talk about it throughout the course of the story, especially at the beginning, but midway through he meets a doctor, and the doctor tells him that what is happening to him, and if you carry on, you're going to be lobotomized. And obviously at the end of the film, it fades to white because Paul Verhoeven wanted people to be unsure whether he'd been lobotomized at the end of the film.
Right.
So, and I think it's a great way of looking at it.
I read that he actually had the script tweaked and rewritten to make it more ambiguous for the audience. Yeah.
He said that if as soon as you put Arnold in a film, the audience want it to be real.
Totally.
He wanted it to be for people to be unsure.
Yeah. And I don't know what you thought about Arnold's performance. I thought it was awesome. It's one of his best, I think. And there's a lot of great supporting performances here. And I think what makes the Arnold performance so good is he kind of goes against type. So rather than like the bold action hero, he portrays this like confused, vulnerable, kind of sympathetic character, and he's up to it. it shows you he's got some acting chops. I mean, he's not the greatest actor, obviously, but I think he was up to it.
Yeah, 100%. And they surrounded him with lots of good actors, and but they didn't need to in this case. Like, he does a good job. No one can say that, especially at that point in his life, he didn't know how to act. He did a good job.
Yeah,
100%.
Michael Ironside, like, he steals that film. He's God's gift to us all, even if he gets his arms cut off.
Right.
It's not the only literary adaptation he's been in either, because The Running Man was a Stephen King novel.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, this is like right in the middle of his, you could call his like imperial period, when he was by far the biggest movie star in the world. I would say between like 1984 and like roughly 1999, he was huge. And then I think in 96, Tom Cruise kind of overtakes him on the back of Mission Impossible. But for a solid 15 years, he was the biggest movie star in the world, and this is right in the middle of that, and it's really in my opinion, the high watermark. Shane, it's interesting that you talked about how you watched this with your dad. I have a similar sort of affinity for it, because I watched it. There's this friend I had growing up, and I would go over his house for like sleepovers, and we watched that, and I always have this memory of it being so fun. It was never something my parents would let me watch when I was like 12. But I went over and I watched it at my buddy's house, and it was just like, I have these great memories of like, it was like kind of illicit that I was watching it. So it kind of added to it was like a little bit taboo. So I have, it definitely has, I have great memories of when it came out, or at least on VHS.
Mine's kind of like, my dad was like a weekend dad. So it would be similar, but combining the two, whereby I'd go over there, and on Friday night we'd always get a film, and he'd just put it on, and he'd be like, well, as long as you're not scared of anything. But yeah, it's one of the memories. As soon as you said Total Recall, is, you know, in the mining scene where he has like a lucky escape. I can't remember if it was Arnold or a different character, and all those like whirling like multiple blades are like pinning him in, and like I can just remember turning at my dad at that point, and he was like, "Are you all right?" I was like, "I'm just gonna look away for a minute." Sorry, Shane, go on.
No. I was 8 when I first saw this film, and I loved the entire thing. It was the Michael Ironside bit, getting your arms chopped off. That did it for me. Like, I was petrified of elevators for a very long time.
Sure, yeah, totally. Did you rewatch it, Shane?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so did I. I had forgotten like how rich the movie is. Like, what makes it so great for me is like how complex and thematic it is. I just jotted down a bunch of different themes that I saw in the movie. Obviously, colonialism, environmental degradation, environmental justice, the commodification of vital resources. In that case, it's air, but it's very analogous to what we have now with water, at least in the US, you know?
One thing I noticed rewatching it, and I had to double check and research it, is when he's on Earth, there are only adverts for Coca-Cola, but when he's on Mars, all the adverts are for Pepsi.
Oh, really?
That's
cool. So
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, they've basically, like, Pepsi got kicked out, and they're only on Mars.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've heard enough about Total Recall, to be honest with you. Unless you guys have got anything written down that you want to add to it.
No, I'm so good.
Okay.